So we're going outside of Chicago for this story, guys, to Texas, but this story is almost identical to a story that happened in Chicago that I did on my channel back in 2019 about a woman named Marlena. You guys may remember she was a pregnant woman on the south side, a young expectant mom, and she was killed for her unborn baby. The baby was taken out of her, and the baby actually survived outside of her womb for I think a couple weeks, but then the baby died as well. And so double homicide charges, are what the people then had to deal with. But we had a case like that just yesterday in Texas. A woman named Taylor Renee Parker was convicted of murder for killing a woman to take her unborn baby. And this right now is a very interesting case given all the political turmoil that's been happening in the United States surrounding the Roe v. Wade decision. And it has to deal with the question of what does the law consider a fetus if it is killed without the mother's consent? Is it a clump of cells or is it a human being? Because in 38 states right now, laws are on the books. Some of these are liberal states where if an unborn baby is killed without a mother's consent, the killer can be charged with the crime of murder. Now you might say, well, isn't that the same thing that abortion clinics do? And yeah, I mean, it is. Right now in these states, the law defines, that organism, whatever it is you want to call it, as a clump of cells when it's killed by an abortion clinic, but a human being when it's killed by somebody else. And you might say, well, that's not what I learned in biology class, and that's true, but I mean, that's an inherent inconsistency right now in the laws of those states. The exact charges and the exact sentence for this woman is going to depend on exactly how the court defines that organism, fetus, and at that point, infant when she takes it out, whatever it is however it is you personally want to define it. But her lawyers were trying to argue that the fetus was not a person, and so she can't be charged additionally for any crime committed against that being, whether alive or defined as something other than a life. But as being reported by CBS News, a Texas woman was convicted of capital murder Monday for killing a pregnant woman to take her unborn baby. A Bowie County jury in northeast Texas deliberated about an hour before finding Taylor Renee Parker, 29, guilty of the October 2020 murder of a woman named Reagan Michelle Simmons Hancock, 21, and the abduction of the daughter cut from her womb, who later died. So the fetus was taken out of the womb and then died at a later point. Now, the abduction charge is what's in question here, because her lawyers were trying to argue that you can't abduct something that's not a person. The verdict of a jury of 6 men and 6 women came after 3 weeks of sometimes grisly testimony. They said her attorneys argued that the baby was never alive and moved to dismiss a kidnapping charge, which would have lowered the capital murder charge to murder. So capital murder and murder legally are two different things. Okay, with the kidnapping of the unborn baby, it becomes capital murder. Now, at the point at which she cut the baby out, obviously, though, it becomes a born baby. Legally, once air touches the baby's face, its legal protections change. The legal definition of that being changes. There was a famous case in Philadelphia of a abortionist who went by the name of Kermit Gosnell. There was actually a movie made about this. And he now is sitting in prison on multiple murder convictions for life. He's doing a life sentence because in second and third trimester abortions, the baby's too big to come out through the suction method. So they have to position it feet first. They remove it up to the head. They have legally to stop the head. They can't remove the head until they first pierce the back of the head. And legally, they have to pierce the back of the head when the head is still inside. If they take the head all the way out and the baby is alive on the table legally, but at that point, they have to perform life-saving procedures. So they pierce the back of the head with the head still inside. Once the brains flow out of the uterus, they call that the Calvaria sign. Once they see the Calvaria sign, legally then they can remove the rest of the head. He wasn't doing that. He was in a rush. He was, not doing things by the book, and he was just yanking the kid all the way out. The nurses at his trial testified that they could hear these babies, some of them crying on the table. And then he would then just do the rest of the procedure on the table outside of the mom. Now you might ask, what is the practical difference as far as the end result for the victim between what he did and what abortion clinics do? There is none. And that's the answer to your question. There is none. And so, this is the legal debate going on right now. So they said, quote, "That's why in opening statements we spend so much time on definitions. You can't kidnap a person who has not been born alive," according to Jeff Harrelson in his final argument to the jury. Prosecutors said, however, that several medical professionals testified the infant had a heartbeat when born. They also recounted Parker's actions leading to the day that Simmons Hancock was killed. They said, "We have methodically laid out what Parker did, why she did it, all the moving parts, and all the collateral damage. The best evidence the state of Texas has that baby was born alive is that Taylor Parker said it wasn't." Fellow prosecutor Lauren Richards recounted all of the masquerades that Parker performed for different people, including the pregnancy that she faked leading up to the killing. In the past 2 weeks, the evidence has never been more clear, according to Assistant District Attorney Lauren Richards, and what she told the jury. She said she's a liar, a manipulator, and now she's going to be held accountable for it. So they said she reminded the jury of how Reagan was beaten in the head at least 5 times with such force that the blows compressed her skull into her brain. She said, quote, "The pain that Reagan must have felt when Taylor started cutting her abdomen hip to hip, it's indescribable. When Taylor had the baby and Reagan was still alive, that's when Taylor started slashing and cutting. She can't leave her alive. It was no quick death. She just kept cutting her. I guess Reagan would not die fast enough for Taylor to get out of there and get on with her plans." So during the trial, a state police investigator testified that Parker conducted intensive research on how to fake a pregnancy convincingly. On the day of the killing, she watched a video on the physical exam of an infant delivered preterm at 35 weeks. After the killing, Parker was stopped by a Texas state trooper in DeKalb, Texas, 12 miles north of the crime scene. She told the trooper that she had given birth on the side of the road and that the baby was not breathing. The station reported Parker was then taken to a hospital in Idabel, Oklahoma, where the baby was pronounced dead. The punishment phase has been scheduled to begin October 12th. Prosecutors are seeking the death penalty, although jurors may opt for a sentence of life imprisonment without parole. So they'll decide on her sentence at that point. But that's a very interesting case that we have going on here, man, because if it's just murder, that's going to carry one sentence. If it's capital murder, that's going to carry another sentence. Very interesting legal case here that may provide a precedent for future cases, especially in light of what's just recently happened with the Supreme Court. So you guys can let me know what you think in the comments section. Very controversial issue, man, but there's cases playing out now such as this that cause these definitions to constantly be challenged and questioned again and again, especially in a state like Texas where they overturn the law up to 6 weeks previous to what the Supreme Court had done. There's a lot of interesting cases like this. There was a case in Florida, a guy named John Weldon. His wife, this also happened in about 6 weeks. His wife had gotten pregnant and he didn't want the baby. His wife wanted the baby, he did not. So he spiked her drink with the abortion pill, causing her to miscarry. She didn't know that she was taking the abortion pill. He snuck the pill into her drink. So she miscarried and lost the baby at 6 weeks. They charged him with murder. And he eventually, as part of a plea agreement, was allowed to plead guilty to a lesser charge, but he was sentenced to 15 years in prison for doing that, a sentence that he's now serving. Additionally, in California, there was just a woman who in an auto accident killed a pregnant woman, and she was charged. This is a case that's still playing out in the courts in California, which is a very liberal state. She was charged with a double homicide. One body for the woman, one body for the unborn kid. There was another case in New York, a case of a woman named Liv Abreu. She was pregnant and she was stabbed in the abdomen. She lost the baby. She survived. He was charged with murder for doing that, even though she survived, meaning she was not the victim of that murder. And this is in New York. So the thing that I always say to anybody that claims that at any particular point we at a stage of development that we were all at were just a clump of cells, if that's the case, if it's just a clump of cells, these people that are incarcerated, some of them serving lengthy prison sentences on murder convictions for killing fetuses, these people should all be free. Because destroying a clump of cells is not murder. I do that every time I pop a pimple. That's destroying a clump of cells. If it's a clump of cells, these people should all be free. They've been unjustly incarcerated. They're being wrongfully held. They should have their convictions overturned. They should be exonerated. They should be let out. And to my knowledge, to this day, I've never seen anybody on the left or in the pro-choice camp take that position and advocate for these people's innocence and freedom. They seem to throw them under the bus and claim that it was a human being that they killed when they kill it, but it's a clump of cells when Planned Parenthood kills it. Biology doesn't work that way. If this is the party of science, they're making the Republicans look like Nobel Prize winning astrophysicists with their denial of denying climate change is nothing compared to that, as far as throwing science under the bus. Like, they got to make up their minds. Is it a clump of cells or a human being? One of the two. That's why I'm pro-life, and you guys can let me know your position, man. I never pretend to be unbiased. I think all news organizations are biased. I'm not even a news organization. I'm just some dude on the street making YouTube videos. So, I'm not going to insult anybody who's intelligent and try to hide my bias. But you guys can let me know what you think in the comment section. This is your boy When You See Report. I'm out.